yeah, as you probably may guess from this slide, my name is Riccardo Tempesta. I'm not sure that everyone knows me. But anyway, before we go, just allow me to say something about me. I know no one will care, but my ego does. So yeah, I'm CTO at Mage Specialist, and oh yeah, that is my actual picture. The previous one was when I was young, and that is my boss, my real boss. Well, actually, he's the second in charge because the first is my wife, of course. And yeah, I'm a Magento certified developer, Developer Plus, and blah, blah, blah. But I want to say I'm in the top contributors list of 2017. I want to say just this because it makes me very proud. Because if you are part of the community, you must be a contributor of Magento. And today, why I'm here? Well, I don't remember. Okay, I have to talk about security. A very new topic. Yeah, no one is talking about that. Yeah. In fact, I know, and please do not lie to me. You're thinking this. Another guy talking about security. Oh, please kill me now. But it's going to happen. Well, of course, not to kill you, but to talk about security. And I will do in a different way. So this is the good news. And I want to start with one question. And don't worry, I don't want anyone to answer this question. I want you just to focus on this question. And this question is, what is the difference between real-life security and IT security? I know that when asked this, most of the people just answer, well, real-life security is real. Impressive answer. But it's true, because yeah, real-life security is something everyone cares about real-life security. And IT security, yeah, come on, let's be honest, it's something that is decoupled from reality, it's something virtual. I mean, for real-life security, I mean, we feel safe at home, for example. So we do not want anyone to break in our house, maybe during the night. This is scary. We want to avoid this. Maybe you have your wife, your children. Well, I have that mighty dog, so I will not be scared. But, you know, it's something you want to avoid. And yeah, come on. If someone hack my PC, yeah, that's virtual. It's something less important. Because probably the most expensive thing I have inside my PC is my Steam account. Well, I have a lot of games anyway, but it's not so. Yeah, I also have that secret folder, but I don't want to talk about that now. But yeah, it's something, you know, disconnected from reality. I have a bit bad news this time, because it doesn't work this way, actually. Because today we live in what I like to call a cyborg society. And please tell me you remember this robot. Okay, cool. Number 5. Because today, I was telling, we live in what I like to call a cyborg society. And I say cyborg because, you know, a cyborg is an organism composed by a biological part. And of course, we are humans, or at least we are supposed to be. So we are the biological part of our society. But today, we live with machines in a way that we use computers to get interconnected each other. So we are not cyborg, of course, but our society is, because it's composed by these two kind of souls. And we use computers for transactions, for money transaction, to get connected, to sometimes even to feel safe, and sometimes even for life support. So today, we cannot say anymore that what happened in IT has no consequences on real life. Sometimes the IT is more real than reality itself. So for example, if you steal your PayPal account, I can steal your real money in real life. And if I steal your Facebook account, well, I think you can have problems with your wife in the real life, believe me, and not by experience. But despite this, a lot of people is facing security with a kind of optimism, you know. Security is something, a security issue is something that happens to other people. So it will never happen to me because I'm not so important, you know. But the problem with security is that we have a lot of people with a lot of free time trying to hack other people's. They will not care who you are. If you have a security vulnerability, someone will use it, even just for fun. And I want you just to remember what happened in 1983. Do you remember? 1983. Come on, it's history. One. Or games. Come on, do not make me feel old. Tell me you remember this movie. Okay, come on, raise your hand if you were born in 1983. Oh. Raise your hand if you're born in this century. I'm old, yeah. And well, anyway, this is what just a joke because I don't think that Magento will start a thermonuclear war, of course. But you know, security is a very serious topic. So let's go back to reality. We can talk about security from many different aspects. So we can talk about operating system security, infrastructure. We can tell about hacking people because if you didn't know, we can even hack people. Social engineering, of course. But today we talk about the application level because we are talking about Magento. So it's just a very small piece of a very wide topic. And I want to face the application level because, yeah, we know we are working with Magento, and Magento is probably one of the most secure e-commerce platform in the world, and for sure is the most secure platform, e-commerce platform I've ever used. But it is not enough because we never use Magento as it is. I mean, just out of the box. We usually customize Magento. We set up Magento, we configure it. So sometimes if we are not so experts from the security aspects, we can introduce new security issues. And I'm sure you're a good programmer, but sometimes introducing a security issue is very easy. Because security is like the devil. The security bug is like the devil. It is hidden in the detail. So sometimes you have maybe a code that you are sure that is working, but you have a security issue inside. We'll see some examples I like very much for the security aspect. And you probably will say, oh gosh, I didn't know this. And why? It's because you know, the definition of a security issue is very similar to a definition of a bug. So it's just one unexpected behavior. So your application is working, but sometimes probably is working too much because it's giving information that it shouldn't give because of the security issue. So it's just one unexpected behavior when one unexpected input is provided. So when you send one expected input, your application is supposed to work. But when you send one unexpected behavior, sometimes you may have very bad surprises. So we'll see some of them. Do you remember this game? Oh. Wow. The most common pitfalls. And I will show you just a couple of examples. The first one is probably one of my favorite examples. So it's just a scenario in my imagination. So we have to create a kind of authentication system. Don't ask me why, it's just an example. And we have one table with one user and one token. So, and we provide this authentication through a JSON payload. So we say we want this user to be authenticated with this token, and we have to check, of course, that the token is the same we have in the table. So we authenticate this user. And we want to implement this way. So it's very simple. Yeah, we check, we provided one user and one token inside our JSON payload, of course. We get the expected token from the database, then we say, if they are the same, just return true. If they are not the same, just return false. It's very simple. Do you see any bug? Yeah, the code again. I'm sure that most of you, raise your hand, do not say anything. Raise your hand if you find a bug. If you found a bug here. I will ask you later. No, I don't believe him. I will show you. So we told before, the expected input. So we provide any random token, so a wrong one, and we got access granted false. So it's working, basically. But what happened if we send something completely unexpected? So I'm not saying about a strange string or whatever. If we send something outside the realm of a string, for example, a number, and this number is 0, if we send 0, we got access. And you probably will say, no, it's not possible, because 0 is not the same of your token. It's not possible. I will show you something about PHP, because remember, the best practices in PHP is not to use PHP in the PHP way. It's to use in the Java way, actually. Okay, look at this. We have A that is 0, and B is whatever you like, but a string. It's a string. We all know that 0 is false, so A is false. Yes, it's true that A is false. And B is true because we know that every string is true in PHP. So we can assume that A is false and B is true. So we think that A is different from B. If you compare A to B, they are true. Because of an effect of PHP that a lot of people is undervaluing, that is the weak typing. Because if you want to try to convert any string to a number, we got 0. So 0 is 0. And we get rid of this check. I told you before that is just my imagination. Actually, it is not exactly true. The code is completely right, but I found this in real modules. So when you create modules, when you take third-party modules, it's very hard to find security issues, and you have to check inside the code. And keep in mind this, because this is one of the most common pitfalls, and it's very simple to hack. Of course, you were getting this. We have a winner, you know. And of course, the solution of this bug is to use the so-called strict comparison. So we do not use 2 equals, we just use 3 equals. Okay. I think it does not need any further explanation. So the first thing you should do when talking about security is to use strict comparison every time you can. And from this point of view, I have to say that the people of the community engineering are doing a very good example of code with the MSI project. So when you have any question about how to write a code in a very good way, look at the codes they wrote for the MSI project. So thank you, Igor and David, where you are. I do not see you. Anyway, and okay, let's look at another example. We know that PHP has problems with strict typing, and we want to use another method that is string compare. Please note these, and when you see this, never use the code. You know why. Anyway, string compare, most of the PHP people probably do not know what string compare is. It's mostly used in C. Anyway, it can compare strings, and if they are the same, it returns 0. Otherwise, a positive or negative value. So basically, it's almost the same. And we see that, of course, the expected string, the expected behavior when a random token is provided is granted. And even if we give 0, because string compare is smart enough, but again, we can go even outside the realm of a string and a number. So what if we pass one array? Oh, I forgot about this, so it was the next slide. If we send one array, we got, again, access. And you will say, why is that possible? Because one array, it cannot be the same as a string or a number or whatever. So we cannot compare arrays. Look at this. If we say A is equal to A, yeah, it's true, they are the same. A is equal to B is false. A is equal to 0 is false. But if we send an array, string compare will fail. And a failing method in PHP just returns null. And null is 0. If you say not null, you get access. So again, and you have this kind of issue in every single string method in PHP. Just remember this when you handle this kind of method. So you have always to check the return types under unexpected conditions. Sometimes they are documented in the PHP doc guide, sometimes they are not. So just try it. But the problem is, yeah, they were just 2 simple examples, and probably most of you people didn't see the bug at the first time. And I think that Yoda is right. When you check every scenario, you cannot. I cannot say with the voice of Yoda, but imagine it. So you should opt for securing your application by design. Now, I say design is not exactly true, but you will understand why I say by design, because you should use strict typing every time. What does it mean? In PHP, starting from 7 and in 7.1 you also have additional feature, but anyway, you can use, for example, the type declaration. So you say, I want a string here, and I want a string here, and this method is returning a Boolean. Because just remember, every method should always return one single type, because the previous security issue was because we had a number or something else as return type. So we can only be sure if we declare at PHP level what kind of output and input, because I told you before, it's always when we have one unexpected input. So if we say we want to force this input, it's fine. And of course, use always strict comparison. And plus, you probably noticed that I split this method inside another one, so it is not taking anymore the JSON, but it's just checking user and token. Probably we unpack the values from another method. And plus, Vinay, please confirm this, we can test this method in a very good way, because it's just a kind of, it's not exactly a pure method, but it's very easy to test it. And yeah, this is just a brief introduction of strict typing, because now we have a spoiler alert, because you will see a lot of additional examples with Juliette's speech. Where is Juliette? She's not here. Anyway, she's going to talk about PHP typing. So if you're interested, just stay tuned and brace yourself, because there is a very big quiz about typing, and it's going to be very funny. Another thing you have to keep in mind is to never fail with success. What does it mean? If you remember the previous method, we were returning true and false. But returning true and false doesn't mean we are failing something. We just return something. So, in my opinion, when you have to deal with security, you should always opt to throw an exception instead of returning something. Because it is the only way to force someone handling this kind of scenario. Otherwise, they can, for example, misunderstand the role of that function, because maybe even the name is not so clear sometimes. So what you should do is to throw exception when you have one unexpected behavior. Even because, remember, throwing an exception is much better, so having an error in one page is much better than having a security hole. But just remember to declare in your PHP doc, because if you're using, for example, PHP Storm or whatever, you will be alerted about the fact that the method can throw an exception. So you will just run in a try and catch. So you will force user to check that scenario. And yeah, Grumpy Cat says there's no success in failing, of course. And another stuff you have to keep in mind is always to return consistent data. Because in the previous example, the first example, we also had a secondary bug that probably no one noticed, that maybe is even wider than the first one. Look at this. What if user token is returned as an empty string? It can happen if get token by user is not returning consistent data. So for example, look at this. This is the implementation of get token by user. We get from a resource model and we load from database, so it is expected to work. But what if we send, for example, one empty string or one unknown user? We should throw an exception here. We are not throwing. And the problem is that get token probably is empty string because the user does not exist. So if we send any user and an empty password, we just get rid. This is very important because maybe I'm using this method from the outside because it's probably coming from one extension, for example, and I have to be sure that under some unexpected condition is throwing one error. And of course, yeah, you can imagine the solution is very simple. So I check if the user exists, otherwise I throw one exception. So the lesson 3 is declare strict types and throw exception. Don't be shy. Another thing, no magic tricks. I will explain to you what I mean here. Most of the PHP developers are going to add, let's say, some side effect to their methods. And this is very bad from a programming point of view. I will show you just one example. So let's look at this. We have a method, getDestinationPath, and what we do is to return this path, and if this path does not exist, we create this path. This is probably one of the worst practice in PHP, because you have a very huge and undocumented side effect here, because you are not only getting something, you are creating something. And this is a very bad behavior, because here I have one expected behavior from the outside. So if I use this method, I do not know I'm going even to create a path. This is very important, especially when you contribute to Magento core, because the Magento core is going to be used by other developers. So you always have to keep in mind. And you have different solutions, of course. The first one is to explicit. Of course, it's not exactly the best option, but one option is to explicit, for example, through one parameter, one, let's say, side effect of this method. But the problem is that a get method should never modify something. Because I totally agreed with Vinay when he said that naming is probably one of the most important things. So if you get a method with getDestinationPath, we should just return something, nothing more. So if we need this kind of behavior, we should, for example, split into two methods with the right name. This is very important because, of course, this probably is not a so important side effect, but maybe under some circumstances, it can be a very huge security issue, allowing you to create random path across the file systems. It's just an example. So please do not take candies from magic methods. When you want to have a good example from the security point of view or the organization point of view in Magento, what I think you should do, I told you before, is to look at the MSI project. If you do not know about the MSI project, it's a multi-stock inventory project, but I do not care so much about the feature of MSI, but the way they created this module. Because in my opinion, it's probably the most advanced way to program an application, not only in Magento. So if you want to take a good example, look at this code. And plus, I have also a couple of bonus lessons. So never trust your input, because from your input you can have very bad surprises. Think like an hacker. Please, not the kind of hacker you see in NCIS or CSI. I mean, something more, yeah, like Mr. Robot, probably. And make someone else test your code. This is very important lesson. And yeah, there is also a bonus lesson. If you're in trouble, always think, what would Igor do? This is very important. So yeah, take a picture. Igor is taking a picture. This is very important. It's not only a joke. Anyway, just to say, yeah, no programmers were injured while running this code, but do not try this at home. We saw what can happen when you add a new bug, but sometimes you probably downloaded some extension from an unknown source and you have a security issue and you do not know if your Magento has been hacked or not. So I will show you a couple of tools that will be very useful. Well, the first two tools are quite, yeah, you know, Mage Report. I think everyone here know about Mage Report. Anyway, it's a kind of scanning tool from the outside of Magento, checking if your website, for example, has all the patches installed and so on. And Magento Security Scanner, that is a tool provided by Magento itself. It works almost in the same way of Magento Report, but with some additional information. But if you think that you have been hacked, I strongly suggest you to take a look at this. The first one is not exactly a tool, it's just a text file containing one of the most common patterns you will find in a PHP violated code. So you will just run through grep, and you will find a lot of files with a lot of false positive, of course, because it's just a list of regular expressions. But at least you have one restricted list of files you have to check. And the second one is Claim AV. Claim AV is just a scanner, is an antivirus scanner for Linux, but I didn't know that Claim AV can also scan PHP files and JavaScript files looking for the most common threads. And of course, I told you before, if you are in the Magento community, your duty is to contribute with Magento. And I want to be, of course, a good example, not only the guy talking about contribution. And yeah, our company provided a set of tools for the security protection of Magento. You can find from two-factor authentication through even an intrusion detection system for Magento. And if you're going to be at the workshop tomorrow about security, we'll see them in action, because we are going to have a live hacking session of Magento, and we will use this tool to protect our Magento. And I also have to say that I'm proud to announce here what. Okay, I will say later. Okay, and I'm very proud to say this because two-factor authentication in Google reCAPTCHA we provided as an open source modules will be embedded in 2.3. Things that makes me very proud of it. And probably will be just a small part of that 25%, but a very good part. And thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, please do not hack my accounts.